Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to go on a pretty incredible journey. Not across the world, but deep, deep inside ourselves. We're going to explore how scientists basically built the ultimate navigation tool for our own bodies, a GPS for our genetic code. Let's get into it.
So, just imagine trying to find one specific house in a country that has no maps, no street signs, and, oh yeah, 3 billion different addresses. That was the huge challenge scientists were up against with the human genome. It's this massive, incredibly complex code, and finding anything specific in there used to be, well, pretty much impossible. So, where do you even begin to draw the map?
Well, they came up with something called gene mapping. And honestly, the best way to think about it is exactly like building a Google Maps for our DNA. See, it's not enough to just know a gene exists. You have to know its exact address, its neighborhood, and which other genes are living right next door. This map is the absolute foundation for understanding how our bodies work and what happens when they don't.
Every great map starts with the big picture, right? Before you can even think about cities and streets, you gotta know where the continents are. And in genetics, our continents are our chromosomes. Figuring them out was the first giant leap.
So here was the problem. Scientists had found thousands of human genes, but they had absolutely no idea which gene lived on which of our 23 pairs of chromosomes. It was like having a huge jumbled list of every landmark in the world, but no continents to put them on. The very first step was just to sort through all this genetic chaos.
Now, the technique they used to do this, somatic cell hybridization, was brilliantly strange. Seriously, they fused human cells with mouse cells. These new hybrid cells were really unstable and just started randomly kicking out the human chromosomes one by one. So scientists would just track a specific protein made by a human gene and wait. The moment that protein vanished, they knew the chromosome carrying its gene had just been booted out. It's kind of like trying to find a recipe in a 23-volume encyclopedia set by just throwing out one book at a time until your cake tastes terrible.
Okay, so we've placed our genes on the right continents, our chromosomes. That's a huge step. But, a continent is still a massive place. Now we need to start mapping the highways that connect all these genetic landmarks.
This brings us to something called linkage maps. And the key thing to get here is that distance on this kind of map isn't measured in inches or miles. Nope. It's measured in probability. A linkage map tells us how likely two genes are to be passed down together, which, in turn, tells us how close they are to each other on that chromosome.
And the engine behind this whole thing is a process called recombination. So when our bodies are making sperm or egg cells, our chromosome pairs get together and they swap little pieces of DNA. Think of it like two long, tangled strings of beads. Genes that are really close together, beads right next to each other, are almost always going to stay on the same string. But genes that are far apart, they're much more likely to get separated during all that swapping. So by counting how often two genes get split up, we can actually map the relative distance from each other.
And get this process is so reliable, it even has its own unit of measurement. It's called a centimorgan. 1 centimorgan is super simple. It just means there's a 1% chance that two genes will be separated by recombination. It's literally the official mile marker on our genetic highway.
All right, knowing the highways is great, but for a really useful map, one that can take you right to a specific address, you need street signs, and I mean millions of them. And the next big revolution in gene mapping gave us exactly that.
You see, the early genetic maps had to rely on big, obvious landmarks, things you could actually see, like someone's eye color or a particular genetic disease. But these were few and far in between. It was like trying to navigate an entire country using only the major mountain ranges and rivers. To get a high-res map, we needed something way more specific.
And here's the upgrade. Instead of using visible traits, modern mapping uses DNA polymorphisms, basically tiny variations in the DNA sequence itself, like SNPs. The difference is it's night and day. We went from a handful of broad landmarks to millions of hyper-specific, super-accurate genetic street signs. This lets scientists create these incredibly detailed maps, pinpointing gene locations with just astonishing precision.
So, we've built our map. We have a comprehensive Google Maps of the entire human genome. It's all there, in the 23 pairs of chromosomes tucked away in our cell's nucleus. We're done, right? Well, not quite. The story has a really fascinating twist. Just let that sink in for a second. We've spent all this time and effort mapping billions of letters of DNA, an entire atlas of our genetic information. But what if there's a secret, separate instruction manual hiding somewhere else in our cells?
And this is where we discover extrachromosomal inheritance. It turns out, not all of our DNA lives in the main library of the nucleus. A small but absolutely vital amount of our genetic code is located somewhere else entirely, inside the tiny power plants of our cells, the mitochondria.
Okay, so let's break down the differences here. Your nuclear DNA, the main genome, is organized into those 23 pairs of chromosomes, and you get half from your mom and half from your dad. Simple enough. But your mitochondrial DNA is totally different. It's a tiny circular loop, and this is the crazy part, it's inherited almost exclusively from your mother.
So why only from your mother? Well, it's actually just simple biology. When a sperm fertilizes an egg, it really only contributes its nucleus. But the huge egg cell provides everything else that the new embryo needs to get started. All the cytoplasm, the nutrients, and all the little organelles, including the mitochondria. And that means all of your mitochondrial DNA is a direct inheritance passed down your maternal line.
So this journey to map our own biology has been one of the greatest scientific adventures in history. I mean, we went from having no map at all to this incredibly detailed atlas of our chromosomes, and then discovered a whole separate genetic world hiding in plain sight. It just makes you wonder, right? What else haven't we found yet?